I'd like to welcome you to our second special joint commission meeting. This is a meeting of the Commission on the Use of Publicly Owned Property, the Conservation Commission, the Country Club of Woodbridge Commission, Economic Development Commission, Emergency Medical Services, Fire, Human Services, Library, Police, Recreation Commissions, and the Woodbridge Board of Education. As you know, this is the second night that we're having this meeting so that we could maximize the opportunity for members of the commission to be with us. The adjudicatory boards were not part of this joint meeting because we did not want them to face a conflict of interest should anything that comes up this evening be before them at some later time. Rod, you're welcome up here if you want to come. It's up to you. This meeting is a continuation of the effort I've been making to try to help us all get educated about the facts relating to the Country Club of Woodbridge. It's obviously a very big issue in our town. There's been a lot of misinformation and confusion, and I think it's very important that we all start out from the same basis of facts as we go to make decisions about it. And I can't say too often that the decision about any sale of town land is up to the residents. And it's very important, as you are all ambassadors for the town. You're members of our boards and commissions. And if you are armed with the facts, it will help all of us. Just a few weeks ago, Tony got a call from someone asking if at the Board of Selectmen meeting that week, there would be a vote to sell the Country Club property. So people are, very basic misunderstandings about what the situation is and what their role is. So I really appreciate your taking the time to catch up on the facts. One of the things that's important this evening is that you let us know any additional information that you think would be helpful, and we can add it to the presentation. And also, if you've been hearing questions from other people, you can pass them along to us too, so that we fill out the information and people feel that they understand what's happening in town. We'd like to pretty much go through the presentation without questions unless there's some clarification that you need. And when you do ask a question, if you could identify yourself and your commission, it would be helpful. We're taping this and we'll make the tape available as well. I'll start out with some of the basic background facts, and Tony Genovese, who is our finance director and administrative officer, will then switch to the financial data. And I do want to thank Bob Hill, who originally had the idea of having these joint commission meetings. I think it was a great idea and a good way to efficiently get information to people together. So I guess just one more, you'll see this in the presentation, but the Country Club of Woodbridge was an unplanned purchase for our town. We do pretty careful planning, long-range capital planning, and of course our operation budgets. But the situation arose and the town made the decision, the voters decided that it was important to purchase this land to control development. The purchase price at the time was $7 million. The total cost to date has been in excess of $10 million. That's including the purchase price, of course. It is, to some extent, crowding out other borrowing that we might want to do. There are other projects that are important to the town that we've been talking about, and we do like to control the amount of our borrowing, so we stay below a certain percentage of our budget. And I think as we consider the future of the property, the framework that I've come to is that the best decision for the town is one that balances fiscal responsibility and fiscal prudence with maintaining the character of the town, recognizing the high value we place on open space, and if at all possible, providing housing opportunities for seniors in town who would like to downsize and remain in Woodbridge. So with that, I think we'll start the presentation. You probably all know Betsy Yagla, who's helping us this evening, and I want to thank her so much for helping with the presentation and organizing meetings. Well, this is the map, and you probably all know that's where the Country Club is located. It's Woodfield Road, and this gives you a little better sense of it. It's about 150 acres. Some of the property is on the other side of the road, but the majority is the Country Club and the Clubhouse and pool. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So in May of 2009, the annual town meeting approved the purchase of the property for approximately $7 million. At the time, the long-term options that were presented as possibilities for the property were that the town leased all golf course operations to a third party. The town operates the golf course and hires a third party to run the day-to-day operations. The town sells all or part of the property for controlled development, or a combination of all of those options. So there have been 3 attempts to come up with a long-term plan for the property. The first was in 2010, when the town issued an RFP for a long-term lease or purchase of the property. There was only one response. And I know there's a lot of discussion about the clubhouse and the condition of the clubhouse and disagreement about how much it would take to fix it and use it for something else. But I will tell you that on the different occasions when people have come to look at the property, one of the holdbacks and what keeps the business sector from being interested in the property is the condition of the clubhouse. So in this case, there was one response from MDM Golf. The town had already signed a contract with MDM for a short-term operation, and they continued that operation at that time. So the second attempt for a long-term plan was in August of 2011. The town issued an expression of interest for potential development of active housing on 17 acres. There were 2 responses, and the preferred response was Toll at that time. They were proposing $2.3 million for 58 townhomes on 17 acres. It was right along Woodfield Road, mostly that sort of wooded, rocky area, if you know the property. Again, it was up to the residents, and this was turned down in a referendum, so that was over. So in December of 2011, the MDM contract ended, and the town determined not to renew it, in part because MDM owed the town money and was in arrears in the contract. In January, the town issued an RFP for management of the Country Club, so not to sell it, but just to substitute for MDM. And there were 5 proposals, and at that time, we entered into a 3-year contract for Billy Casper Golf to manage the Country Club. And Billy Casper has been managing it since then, and managing very well, according to everyone's reports, and we've had a wonderful relationship with them. So when I took office in 2013, the Country Club was a very, very big issue. People were very concerned because we were losing quite a bit of money at the time, and I began by holding public meetings to hear the interest of town residents. During that year and those months, we had about a dozen different meetings to really hear from people about their thoughts about the Country Club. And what emerged was interest in open space, fiscal responsibility, and senior housing. In January of 2014, well, just before that actually, I renegotiated the contract with Billy Casper Golf because, as I mentioned, the town had suffered some pretty severe losses, and Billy Casper was amenable to changing the contract so that they would take the risk of loss. They also took more of the potential upside, but being a municipality, we are not business people. We should not be big risk takers, in my view. So that gave us a lot more security in dealing with the Country Club. In February of 2014, we made our 3rd attempt for a long-term plan for the Country Club. Malone and McBroom were the consultants who the town had hired to do the POCD update, and we did a separate contract with them to work with the Country Club on an expedited basis at that time. They recommended that the town maintain the golf and pool operations and develop active adult housing, basically similar to what Toll had proposed but had been defeated in 2011. So we issued an RFP following Malone and McBroom's advice saying if somebody wanted to do that kind of housing, we would look at that. But we also put in the RFP the opportunity for any proposal that was in keeping with the character of the town, that it could have been with or without golf, with or without residences, and we wanted to make it very open to see what kind of perhaps creative proposals would come to town, because so many of us, when we think of the property, think big. I know there was someone who had come to one of our meetings and said, we should just make it a beautiful sculpture garden, which I think everybody would love to have, but there is a certain fiscal reality that we have to face. But by putting it out, we just thought we'd see what in the private sector might emerge with some ideas. We received 2 responses. One was from Toll and one was from Rose Company. And before we got too far, Rose withdrew its proposal. I will tell you that their proposal actually required that we spend more money than we would have taken in, at least in the beginning. So it would have been a long shot in any event. But I don't think they were really used to dealing with town timing, and they withdrew. So the only proposal we had was the Toll proposal. I formed an ad hoc committee to review those proposals. That's been the practice in the town in the past when we do RFPs. We have committees that review the proposals and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. The ad hoc committee, while the 2 proposals were still on the table, reviewed both, met with both proposers, with Toll and Rose, and recommended that the town look into the Toll proposal. So I'll tell you what this was, although at this point it's pretty much off the table. The Board of Selectmen have not voted, but by consensus agreed that this proposal probably would not pass in Woodbridge. So Toll was proposing to purchase about 2/3 of the property for $7.5 million, which they would pay upon closing. And they would build 96 attached townhomes and 74 detached homes. And that's the reason the Board of Selectmen really feels this is not something suitable for the town, because it is so many units. However, I think it's important for you all to see what the financial offer was at the time. Also, one of the important aspects of this is that the prices would start in the mid-300s. And we did want some units to start where the median price was in the town of Woodbridge. And Toll had said for $6.5 million, they would also demolish the clubhouse, renovate the parking lot, the tennis courts, and the pool, and create a small pool house with bathrooms. There was also the possibility of a 9-hole golf course. So in subsequent discussions, different proposals have come up, and when we get to discuss this, do we have copies? Oh, did you all pick up copies? Okay, great. So A, C, E, and F are the ones that the Board of Selectmen is still talking about. A is the original proposal that I had mentioned to you just before. C was developed at the request of some of our selectmen, and that was large homes on 1.5 acres under the current 1.5 acre zoning that's in the area. The price range would be from the low 600s to high 700s. The price, $3.5 million. And Toll estimated taxes when complete of $950,000. You'll see on the next slide that is gross revenue from taxes. The net, which we have calculated approximately, would be a negative $450,000, because it's likely that these big homes would have many children and more students in the school, which is a big expense for the town. Option E is 69 detached active adult homes. None of these are townhomes. That could change, but this is what the proposal looks like now. The prices were mid-400s to mid-500s for a purchase price of $3 million. Here the estimated taxes are similar at $900,000, but the estimated net revenue is about $500,000, because this would be a condominium association that would take care of the roads and the sidewalks, and there would not be children in the schools, or very, very few. And then we're also, of course, considering having the property be just open space, make it true open space, no golf, no pool, walking trails, perhaps at some point we could put in bike trails, or other recreational facilities. So again, here's the net fiscal impact. Option C, that was the large homes on 1.5 acres, negative $450,000 annually. E was the active adult cluster housing, impact of about $500,000 ongoing revenues, and the open space annual net fiscal impact of $550,000. Some of that is the continued payment on the debt we have on the property now. So with that, we'll move to debt, and Tony will take us through that.
Thank you very much. I wanted to discuss a little about the country club debt, just so that we were all aware of the debt picture when it comes to the country club. The town authorized $7 million for the purchase and closing costs related to the acquisition of the country club. At the time, we issued short-term taxable notes, which is for the $7 million, which was a 2010 fiscal year. And those notes are rated annually. So annually we pay a principal payment plus interest, and principal is $350,000 a year. Because they renew annually, the interest rate fluctuates each year. That's different from bonds, which we renew, which we issue for other projects, which is fixed at the beginning of the borrowing. The current notes outstanding is $5.6 million. The notes were originally issued to provide flexibility to the town for a contemplated sale of all or part of the property, and to help resolve the taxable, non-taxable status of the country club. The taxable being, depending on the use of the property, taxable rates are higher than non-taxable rates. Permanent financing of bonds has a fixed rate, as I indicated earlier, and notes are temporary. So the country club, we've been tracking expenditures and revenues since the acquisition of the country club, and this includes the purchase and closing costs, borrowing costs, professional services, clubhouse costs, golf operations, all costs related to the country club property, pool, all the functions on the property. So that's a little under $12 million. It's $11.8 million from fiscal year 09 to 15. The revenues that were collected for the country club was $2.7 million. A lot of those revenues was when the town ran the golf operation, and we were collecting revenues directly for that. The also included in there are lease revenues from early in the history of the property, when the town leased it out to a third party and received revenue for that. So that's a little over $9 million net cost to the town. One of the questions that was asked, which was a good question, was what does that look like if we remove the costs to acquire the property, to see how it would look, taking out the purchasing cost, the closing costs, and the borrowing costs. So we've done that here. You can go to the, that removes the $6.9 million for the purchase and closing, and the borrowing costs of at least through 15 of $462,000. Most of that's interest, and there's some costs to issue. And so there, the net cost is $1.68 million. So that's sort of the cost that the town has incurred, minus the purchase and the borrowing costs. Another question that keeps coming up that we wanted to answer was, how much does the country club cost per year in the budget? So in 2015, these were actual expenditures, and the clubhouse and golf course was $310,000. Includes the payment to Billy Casper Golf, basically maintenance and utilities on the facility. The pool for that year was $114,000, and the debt was $407,000. So the total in the budget was $832,000 in expenditures. We did receive pool and golf revenues that year of $148,000, and so the net impact on our budget for fiscal year 15 was $685,000. So that's sort of how much it cost that particular year in our budget. In the current year, which we're in, the budgeted expenditures for the same scenario for the clubhouse and golf course was $279,000. The pool budget, $127,000, and the debt, which went down, was $388,000. The reason why the debt goes down is because the interest rate fluctuates annually, so we did that much better in 16 than we did in 15. So the total is $795,000, and estimated pool and golf revenues is about $135,000, $140,000. So you can see the net expenses that year is $660,000, which is below the previous year. I think it's important to, when we talk about the country club and the possible capital needs at the club, I know there's a lot of discussion on this, so we'll start with this, information we do have, and it's a nice backdrop to our existing debt needs in other areas of the town. It's important to understand both aspects so you can balance one with the other. The Golf Commission has requested $400,000 in the next 5 years in the capital budget for equipment replacements, tees, and resurfacing greens. That's of course a budget figure for next year, and is of course subject to some change. Billy Casper Golf has estimated to us that more than $1 million in capital improvements would be necessary beyond the short term. While we don't have any specific information on that, that was something that we felt was relevant to at least share with you. In the pool, there's an anticipated pool needs of approximately $100,000 in the next 5 years. Most of that is to resurface the pool and the pool heater, which is probably something that would need to be replaced sometime in the future. There was some discussion on clubhouse options in terms of how much it would cost to either repair or replace the clubhouse. And while we don't have specific figures on that, there were 3 options presented. One was a mothball option, which basically secures the building envelope, and that would probably cost about $100,000 to $120,000. Most of that is for securing the roof, which does leak, and some windows. Beyond that, the second option presented was general repairs and replacements, which is essentially to repair and replace existing systems and do some minor site improvements. And finally, it would be to demolish the building and reconstruct possibly a new building. Again, some of these depend on the use of the buildings, and so it's hard to sort of identify an exact figure without knowing what the use would be. But there are some items to consider when trying to determine how much the clubhouse would cost into the future. And all that is to sort of get an idea of how much this property can cost going into the future as a backdrop to our existing debt. So our existing town debt as of June 30th, 2015 is $28.6 million. So this includes bonds, as you're all aware. We've done some projects recently, the public works facility, the current beacher renovation, and of course the country club acquisition and the firehouse. Those are some recent projects. So that's currently what we owe. As a result, in addition, the town is also responsible for our share of Amity's debt, which is $13.3 million. So we owe a little under $42 million currently. So that's our current, sort of how much we have as a balance on our existing debt. When it comes to debt service, so debt is how much we owe in total as a town. Debt service is how much we pay annually to pay down that debt. And so the debt service in fiscal year 17 is $2.7 million in our budget. Again, this includes all the projects we discussed earlier, including the new Beecher school renovation. The town portion of Amity's debt in the fiscal year 17 budget, a little under $1.5 million. So we have approximately $4.2 million in debt service costs in next year's budget. One of the metrics we look at, there are several, but one I wanted to bring to your attention, which is one that a lot of rating agencies and other credit agencies look at, is our debt service as a percentage of our budget, which is about 8.6%. Generally, we don't like to be over 10%. It's sort of really not a good place to be. So while 8.6% is not a negative, it's at the point where we like to watch that. So, and along with the country club, we do have other capital needs in the town that we have to consider. First, the town pays approximately 1.7, some years it's 1.5, other years it's higher, in pay-as-you-go capital expenses. These are ones that we pay with current tax dollars, most notably would be road paving and vehicles in the various departments. But there have been a number of future capital projects that have been mentioned for bonding or for borrowing. Again, keep in mind the information that we discussed earlier about where we are with our existing debt. One is the police facility renovation. Another is the emergency services radio system upgrade, the old firehouse, the possible renovation of the senior center, and the animal control facility. So these are all other projects that we have in addition to the country club, possibly, and to possibly add to our existing debt. And lastly, of course, you always have to prepare for the unknown, because since I've been here, one was a little before I got here, we've been faced with some unknown issues that have come up that we've had to borrow for. One, of course, was the country club. That wasn't on any plans or any of our schedules in terms of predicting what our debt would be. And the other was a fuel spill back in Public Works, which was in 1999, I think. So there's every once in a while something comes up that you don't anticipate, and so you should always have some room for that on your in your borrowing plans. Some additional information that was requested at the last meeting, which we wanted to provide, was membership information. So we're able to get that from Billy Casper and from the pool administration. And so the first was the pool in 2015 at 45 Woodbridge residents, and total pool memberships were 62. That's down from 84 from the previous year. Golf at 27 Woodbridge residents with total golf memberships of 251. That was up from 238 from the previous year. And finally, golf rounds for 2015 was 31,800, and those played by Woodbridge residents, 2,997. That's it. Thank you. Sure. Yeah.
So if you take nothing else away from this meeting, remember, only Woodbridge voters can authorize a sale of property. So now we'd like to open it up to questions you may have about the presentation or other information you think would be helpful. Morgan?
My name is Marvin Aarons. I'm here because of the EMS Commission, but I'd rather be here as the town historian and someone who was on the board of directors of this country club, and someone whose family were original investors in the country club. My own feeling is the town of Woodbridge should not be saddled with the remnants of anti-Semitism. That's the only reason that club was made, was formed. That was after the war. We have to realize why it's there. Because people wanted to play golf. It was after World War II, and they couldn't get memberships. It was restricted. It was, as you know, from publication that I had at another meeting, it was difficult even to buy property in town. So we can't be saddled as a town by what happened 50 years ago. Secondly, I don't think a rural town of 9,000 people should be in the business of golf. If you read the statistics of golf, I just looked on the internet, and I think a lot of people know, and you can see how few people in the town use it. We should not be running a public golf course. I mean, you might as well start going to business, take over. What if a business downtown, we don't have a downtown, but whatever the area of business we have, goes bankrupt? Would we take it over because, oh, we have to keep that restaurant going? I think it's foolishness. We should not be in the business of golf. What business we should be in is what Tony had listed. Fire, police, ambulance service, the senior center, and of course the school. I live in an area for 45 years. I'm the oldest person there now. Everyone around me has little children. They're all there because of the school. They're not here because of a pool. They're not here because of golf. They didn't buy a property over on Hunting Hill Road or Old Barnabas because there was an open pool or tennis. And let's face it, we have a pool over in the school, indoor. There's one at the JCC. And there are other golf courses here. And you can see how few Woodbridge residents use the facilities. It's absolutely not worthwhile. And I feel very strongly that we are a town that shouldn't be in business of golf. That's not the purpose why we have this town. Absolutely not. And as far as open spaces, I happen to have dogs for many years, and so we use the elderly preserve. There are 800 acres of open space. And I can tell you, anyone that goes by Peck Hill Road, the most cars you'll ever see parked there, people using it, are 2 or 3. So to say we don't have enough open space is nonsense. There's plenty of open space. So that's not the problem. The problem is we purchased it for very good reasons. And now it's time to unload it, as they say. And what I would suggest, which is not the main thrust of why I'm making a little sermon here, is that it just be used as land, like anyone else's land. They get the realtors in town and just sell it for people who want to build a lot. Because we don't need all these extra facilities. We should use them for all the other aims that we have, because we want to keep our police department up, our fire department, the senior center. That's why people are here, in the schools. So I think the reason it was bought, I've talked about, and I don't think that it's necessary to propagate us, a town of 9,200 people, and we own a public golf course. And we're trying to run a golf course, and not even ourselves, we're the middleman. It's absolute nonsense. We should devote ourselves to other things.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I also am on the EMS committee with Marvin, and also live here for 45 years. I'm Alan Davidson, Edge Hill Drive. The one question I have is, what is the per house average cost to maintain this? We have big numbers, but what is my cost if we just let it go fallow, clean it up a little bit, stop the golf, maybe keep the swimming pool, or maybe not even that? But what is the cost for me as a, let's say, a $10,000 a year property tax person? What is the average cost be?
So I think I'll defer to Tony. The cost, if we just kept it as open space, at this point is basically the debt service and shutting down the facilities, perhaps demolishing the building, making it safe. And I don't know if Tony has that number today, but we could get it.
I could get that for you.
We have found that when we look at what is the cost to me for this service, and it's $100, it's $500, it's worth it to me. But unless you look at the whole budget together, this one is $300, the school is another $300, the police department is another $300, and it comes to choices, so that when we look at one individually, we don't really get a picture, but we will look for that number. We don't have it today. It's a good question. Anyone else?
Yeah, can we go back to the slide on...
Deep, would you mind identify yourself and your
I
commission?
wasn't disputing. Country Club of Woodbridge Commission.
I wasn't disputing.
The slide on the capital needs of the golf course. Also, I want to say that there was a slide right at the end about the use of the golf course and also the pool by Woodbridge residents. First of all, the pool also has daily fee uses. That is, people who come for the day and they use the pool. Those golf course numbers, frankly, don't make a lot of sense because you're saying that there's 27 people who play an average of 100 rounds a year. Speaking personally, that's very hard to do. And so,
No,
Yeah.
no, I think you misinterpreted that. Let's go back to it. And,
Okay.
it's the new slide, I think. Well, yeah.
I'm sorry.
31
So you are saying that the 2,997 includes Woodbridge residents who are not members, but they
Correct.
play.
That's correct.
Correct.
Excuse me. Okay. The capital slide, can we look at that? Yeah, this is always, I don't know if it falls in the category of a conundrum, but for years the CCW Commission has done a course improvement plan, and every year we update it. Obviously, it involves a lot of input by Billy Casper Golf, and basically the overall concept is to try to maintain and improve the condition of the golf course. Things get done out of that plan. In 2014, Billy Casper Golf installed about 4,500 feet of golf of cart paths, about 250 yards of drainage. This past winter, we spent about, there was about $50,000 of items that were, basically crossed off the list between bunker improvements, and tree removals. So, so my point is that, these are things that are needed or desired for the golf course, but they get funded by golf course operations. They don't get funded by the capital plan. Relative to the second statement there, BCG estimates that more than $1 million in capital improvements would be necessary beyond the short term. Well, I'm not sure what that means. I suspect, first of all, that the $1 million includes the $400,000 in the prior paragraph. And second of all, I guess I'll agree with that if it's 15 years. That is if they need $1 million over 15 years. But again, this money would be funded, as it historically has, out of the operations of the golf course. This is incredibly misleading.
Well, this is based on what Billy Casper Golf has told us, and they'll be at the Board of Selectmen meeting next month, and we'll hear it directly from them. I have an email here from Billy Casper that says, if golf is going to stay at Woodbridge-owned CCW, we need 7 figures to effectively rehab irrigation, expand tees, redo bunkers, etc. So this is what we're getting from Billy Casper Golf, and
But
we'll have them at the
again,
meeting.
what's the timeline of that?
He said that they could probably continue 1 to maybe 3 years, but after that we'd be into the 7 figures. That's what that's what we've relied on for these numbers.
Well.
Anything else, Bob?
I think, for this discussion about this kind of add on to it, maybe I kind of hear it from other people. The irrigation system, which I've heard some numbers thrown around, someone using, I guess, Oakland's comparison or something, 600,000 or 700,000. I don't know if that's the actual number. I don't really know about it. I guess we're fortunate that the irrigation system, the water comes from, it's not wells, it's coming in, it's town water that comes in. And because of, fortunately, we're not dealing with the Flint, Michigan situation with the water. Basically, from what I understand, they spent about $2,000 on repairing segments of, the stretches of the water line and that type of thing. So it is the type of thing that, little by little, you keep replacing pieces, just like Adam does with all the ball fields. He's replacing heads and spouts and whatever happens to be. And I guess, unless that system, which I guess you could continue to perpetually keep replacing the parts to it, because it's not really like you're replacing a well. So I guess that's one thing. And 2 other things. I know at the last meeting I kind of created some confusion when I asked you about 31 acres. I know on the slide it said February 2014, or whenever the proposal, the RFP went out, it said for 31 acres maintaining tennis and golf. I know where 17 acres were. What were the other 14 acres made of? Was that across the street or just any 31 acres where we could still maintain the tennis and golf?
I believe it was Woodfield Road, but I don't.
Both sides of the street, yeah. I mean, just in relation, I made a comment at the last meeting, I'll make it here. There does seem to be, as not so necessarily fact, but opinion, that since you've renegotiated the contract, the urgency of dumping the golf course has become less of a concern because people see that it's improving, the revenues are growing, the contribution that residents are having to make is more predictable and becoming less, so people are starting to become more comfortable with it staying in as an open space situation. The suggestion I made at the last meeting, which I still think is somewhat of a compromise, I know that the original 17-acre proposal was rejected. I think as things have shifted now, there may be a compromise here with those 31 acres out there that could help fund some of the capital improvements and also pay down some of the debt. It would have.
Can I just respond to that? That might be the case if there were a private developer who wanted to do it, and as far as we know, there is not.
So my suggestion under that would be, as much as we've had RFPs go out, I would reach out just looking at, large home developers, and you got US Home, Hopmanian, there's a number of them where maybe we send packages to them, would you like to bid on these acres? Because then we know because McClellan and McBroom spent a lot of time with us determining it. That may be one just thought process when just one last comment. The last meeting, someone on one of the boards and commissions made a comment in relation to Paul's proposal, taking down the building, and dealing with some of the other issues, that they would take care of it all. I think that proposal was limited to $1 million, I think, and that, just to make sure the facts are correct.
No, it's not. It appears it's written that way, but we've clarified that with them, that they would reduce the price by $1 million, but do all of those things regardless of the cost. Very good point.
Okay.
We did clarify that.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to respond to?
Just one comment on the capital needs. Sort of the point, one of the main points on the capital needs, whether it's the clubhouse or the golf course, is that what you're facing is that you have a risk. The town is exposing itself to a risk that you possibly may need to do some of these things, and you have to understand that you will have that risk, and you have to balance that with other capital needs in town. So you have to decide whether you want to take that risk and possibly have to spend those monies and use borrowed funds to do that when you have other things to borrow for that you'll have to do. So that was sort of one of the main points behind that, whether it's $1 million or $500,000 or whatever. I'm not sure about that number, but I just wanted to make that point.
Also, yes, Mike.
Tony, you answered half my question. The other half of the question is Billy Golf going to contribute anything towards that $1 million capital cost that we may need? Like you said before, they're going to have some risk associated with it, but what is the risk tolerance? Do we know?
We haven't really gotten into that much of the discussion as to who will bear that risk versus who will get the fees and how that will be structured and all that. Hasn't really been discussed. Was just basically what are the possible capital improvements that may be necessary, whether it's borne on by them or by us, or some sort of structure has not been determined.
They said they're willing to do something on the risk level?
Well, they have historically.
No, they haven't.
No.
We haven't gotten that far into that discussion.
I'm sorry, but
No.
my point of not to interrupt, but they have historically done capital expenditure types of items.
Yeah, but,
Anything else? Any other information that would be useful or helpful?
I'm Ellie Sheedy, I'm on the Human Services Commission, and as a member of that commission, we deal with seniors. And being a senior myself, and in a position now, having lived here and raised my family here, I'm living in the same house that I lived in with 4 children and a mother-in-law and a husband. And it's a completely different situation. I don't want to leave. I'd love to stay here. There's no place to go. And I think it would be very nice to pursue this idea of elderly. I know there's been a lot, it's been brought to a vote once, but I don't think people really had enough time to think about it or weren't aware of the options there. I know lots and lots of people who have left and don't want to leave Woodbridge. They want to stay here. This is their home. But there was no place for them to go. So they went to Derby, or they went to Oxford, or they went to all these other places. I think it'd be really nice to have a choice here. And this is a perfect place. You'd have also, you would be getting some income and taxes. And if you stay with the adult choice, you would not have an impact on the schools. And I never hear anybody saying this, so I want to speak up and say I hope we keep this option, to explore it fully, and see if we can have something for us older people.
Hi, Aldana Nova Library Commission. I thoroughly agree with Ellie. We're at an age now, we've been in our houses for many years, and we're still there because we don't know where to go. And we haven't found anything that really is all that appealing to us, and I think to be able to stay in this town would be wonderful.
Marty Halpern, Coop. I agree with the elderly housing, but as far as if we change, does that need a zoning change to do that there?
Yes.
So as far as doing that there, what impact will that have on like the property on Petco Road and other properties?
Very good question. I was about to move to that. We have had 2 legal opinions now to address the zoning questions, which are of great concern to people. The first, there was a lot of talk about spot zoning, and would this be deemed spot zoning and therefore ineffective? And we have a legal opinion to say that if we change the zone for some form of cluster housing, it would not serve as legal precedent for a similar change on other parcels, and wouldn't be spot zoning. And we have a second opinion that's addressed 2 questions, not just looking at it as spot zoning, but would it be precedent for other parcels, and if properly executed, it would not. And also, we could have a very strong assurance that the changes we made at the Country Club would remain with subsequent owners, because that was another concern. Suppose we said, okay, you can do over 55 housing, but then flip it to the next owner who can do something else. And we have very strong legal opinions stating that in the opinion of the attorney who's done a great deal of this work, we can be very secure in knowing that it would stand for subsequent owners. So I think that's a very important question and something people need to know. We've thoroughly researched and are very confident that it would just apply there. Anything else?
I just want to, Hill Recreation, I should have said earlier. I just want to thank you for having this meeting and the last one. I felt that the interchange of information and a chance for each of the boards and commission members to ask questions and also, make suggestions has really been a really good, productive experience. The dialogue back and forth has been really positive. I feel opposed to sometimes when some of these meetings have happened, where people just come up, make public comment, and decide to throw potatoes. I know this may be a risky suggestion at this point because you never know how everyone is going to act, and hopefully in a small town we'll all be civil, as Ed would always say. Okay, maybe that the same presentation is given to the residents where they have a chance to ask questions similar to the way we have tonight. I know last meeting, even though the residents that were here didn't have a chance to ask their own questions, they were very positive about the meeting though.
No, Bob, that is certainly the plan. We thought the next steps would be to have the boards and commissions to see if there are questions you think need to be part of this presentation, so when we bring it to the public, of course we'll have public presentations and discussion. And there was one other item I wanted to bring up, and unfortunately I don't have the document with me, but the owner of Oak Lane Country Club was very disturbed by a comment at the last meeting, which she felt suggested that Oak Lane's play was slow and inferior to the Country Club of Woodbridge, and she was very clear about that not being the case. And I'm sorry I don't have the letter with me. I did want to be sure to set the record straight tonight, so I at least mentioned that, and we'll be sure to we said it at the Board of Selectmen meeting, but I told her I would, and I want you to be sure you know that Oak Lane is a very good neighbor, and we like to think of our neighbors both in golf and pool as we consider what we're doing next. So, anything else? Steve?
When do you expect that asking the Board of Selectmen to schedule a referendum?
I'm sorry?
When do you expect to ask the Board of Selectmen to schedule a referendum?
I don't know the answer to that, Deke. We have to do our public presentations now, and it depends what the board decides. We won't be scheduling a referendum unless there's a vote to make a recommendation. So we haven't gotten there yet. I will tell you that the board, there is consensus on the Board of Selectmen, except for one member. The other 5 board members have agreed that they are open to some development, and they're not necessarily for it or for any proposal, but they're open to some development. They're open to senior housing, and they're open to development by toll. So none of those have been excluded from the discussion. Okay. Rob?
Can you go back to the screen on the loss and how much we lost in fiscal year 2015 and what the projected loss is for 16? That one?
That's fiscal year 15. Those are actual expenditures of various categories, and then the revenues that were collected as a result of the operations, and then that's the net cost to the town or to the budget.
So 684.
So I think that as we talked about in the last meeting, when you put the 1.6
Just a second,
up.
Rob. I think Rob's in the middle of his question.
And what is 16?
660. A little less, primarily because of the debt. The revenues are almost different too. Revenues are a little higher.
Is there a projection for 17?
At 17, the debt is a little higher, and the revenues are lower, especially in the pool. And all the others are pretty similar. So I would say that the 17 would probably be above 700,000.
Well, then the contract with Billy Cash will go.
Excuse me, Deke. We're in the middle of Rob's question.
So I have another question that was unrelated. In the calculation that was looking at the different options, the tax option on the 55 and over, how was that calculated as far as the home assessments? Was that just a guess on what they would list the homes at? How was that conclusion reached?
Just to go back on the 17, I don't have a figure off the top of my head, so I'm not sure. I mean, Deke is right, the contract with Billy Casper does go down, so I'd have to balance all those. I can get that for the next one, though. This one? Here?
No, it was a screen, I think, before that. It had the tax. Yeah, the one you just had, the one with the spreadsheet.
The chart.
Yeah. So
You talk about the estimated taxes when complete.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So that's based on what Toll feels is the average cost of the. See, there's a range there.
Right.
Yeah, it's based on what the average cost would be that they feel that they'll be able to get for those. Each one's different. It's not like right in the middle.
Right. So that's a really rough number.
Correct. Yeah, very rough number. It's just an order of magnitude. But it's based on approximately where they think the average would be in terms of 51 houses between 600 and 700, high 700s. But it's not right in the middle.
Right. Actually, wouldn't it be, isn't E the senior housing? Not C?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, those numbers they seem high, at least, based upon what I think the current market is.
Their
Is there
selling
any way
prices may be very optimistic.
Right, I mean,
But
6 to
it's-
700 for,
Yeah.
it may be higher.
Could be.
Is there,
That may be.
I mean, I guess, how can we sort of narrow that number down?
Well,
I mean, there's so many variables that go into those numbers, it's,
That's why you
There are
take
some-
one number. And,
right, that's kind of hard to rely
you
on.
have to sort of take it in its total
I think your point is well taken, you have to know the assumptions. And the assumptions are certainly not perfect, but it's just to get a ballpark. And also to see which ones are a positive and which ones are a negative impact on the town. But that's based on, you know, if they can't sell the homes for that much, if the prices are going down, we have not negotiated any of this with them. They just put this on the table, so those numbers could change in all kinds of ways.
Just one other question. Option F, would an additional number be not just the debt service, but the demolition cost? So that really has to be added into that. For F? If we keep it,
I think it is in there.
oh, it is?
Yeah, the option F assumes that we would borrow for the environmental remediation, it says it on the bottom there, the Monster Clubhouse, outbuildings.
Okay,
Yeah.
It is in there.
thanks.
Yeah, Tony, on I think when we talked about the last time you gave the presentation, the $1,683,000 that we lost for the time we've operated.
Right.
One of the things and I think you said at the time we lost probably $1 million at the first 2 years. Plus the other, that's an operating loss there. As we get into these other two slides in 2014, 2015, where we're showing 684 loss and 660 loss, we get the debt service in there again. And if it becomes we're not operating, we've got the open space debt either way. So in that case, the loss for the last 2 years would be 276 and 272. So either way, at this point, we're going to be making that payment unless, of course, we sold the property back. So.
Hi, Aldana Noble again. Just for the record, we've looked at Fieldstone Village, which are selling, I think, and I know people there who are paying $800,000 for a home, one very close to another. So I think you could look at that as a comparison to what we may or may not develop. But they're selling.
Yeah, they are selling, and I was told, I think there are 18 Woodbridge families. I think Jimsy only said 20, well, somewhere between 18 and 24, we've been told Woodbridge families have moved to Fieldstone Village, and some of the homes are over $1 million. They're customized there, I think they're variations, so some seniors are sort of downsizing. Anything else? Well, if not, I want to thank you all very much. As I said, you are ambassadors for our town. I thank you so much for your service as volunteers. And if anything else occurs to you, please call us anytime. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.